Every alpha hears the voice of their wolf by the time they turn 16. It is the bond that defines their kind, beast and man, two souls woven into one. Varin heard nothing. For 11 years he had ruled the kingdom of Valdros with an iron fist, feared by every alpha from the frozen north to the scorched south. They called him the Silent Storm. They whispered that his dominance was so absolute, even his wolf dared not speak. They were wrong. The truth was far more shameful. His wolf had never spoken. Not once. Not a whisper. Not a growl. Not even in dreams. Where other alphas felt a beast prowling beneath their skin, Varin felt only cold emptiness. He had learned to fake it, to compensate with brutality, with control so precise it mimicked instinct. No one knew. No one could ever know. Until the night of the claiming ceremony, when Varin walked past 100 noble she-wolves and stopped before a hooded servant girl who smelled like rain and forgotten graves. "Her," he said. The court erupted in shock. But Varin barely heard them. Because the moment his hand touched hers, something stirred in the hollow place inside his chest. Something ancient. Something furious. Something that had been silent for 20 years. His wolf opened its eyes, and its first words turned his blood to ice. "She knows what they did to us." The claiming ceremony was a spectacle of power and pretense. Noble families had traveled from every corner of Valdros, parading their daughters before the Alpha King like merchants displaying silk. The great hall of Thornhold Castle blazed with 1,000 candles, their light glinting off jewels and golden threads, off the hunger in every mother's eyes. Varin stood at the head of the hall, utterly still. He wore black, as always. His pale blonde hair was pulled back from a face that poets called devastating and wise men called dangerous. His eyes, the color of winter storms, passed over the assembly without interest. The Alpha King must choose a mate. His advisor Kale had reminded him that morning. The council grows restless. 11 years without an heir is... "I know what it is." Varin's voice had cut like a blade. He knew better than anyone. An alpha without a mate was incomplete. An alpha without an heir was a dead end. And an alpha without a wolf. That was something else entirely. Now, standing before the crowd, Varin forced himself to focus. The she-wolves had been arranged in a crescent formation, each one more beautiful than the last, daughters of dukes and generals, of ancient bloodlines and immense wealth. Any of them would have been a strategic triumph. Any of them would have been a lie. Because Varin couldn't feel them, couldn't sense their wolves the way an alpha should. Where there should have been a symphony of instinct, recognition, attraction, the primal pull of compatible beasts, there was only silence. Always silence. He walked the line slowly, aware of every eye upon him. The first she-wolf was stunning, golden-haired, her wolf practically radiating submission. She would bear strong pups. She meant nothing to him. The second was darker, fiercer, her wolf prowling just beneath the surface of her skin, a warrior's daughter. She would challenge him in interesting ways. He felt nothing. The third, the fourth, the 10th. Nothing. 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 Varin's expression hardened. Perhaps this was his punishment, to be forever hollow, forever incomplete, to rule a kingdom of wolves, while being only half of one himself. He was about to turn away, to end this farce and deal with the political fallout later, when he caught it. A scent. Rain and night-blooming flowers. Damp earth after a storm. And beneath it, something older. Something that smelled like grief. Like secrets buried so deep they had started to rot. His feet stopped moving. His body had changed direction without his permission. The crowd murmured in confusion as the Alpha King walked past the noble daughters, past the crescent of beauty and breeding, toward the servants gathered at the edges of the hall. And there she was. She stood apart from the others, shrouded in a hooded cloak of deep gray wool. Not a lady, not even a commoner dressed for presentation. A servant, the kind of woman who was meant to be invisible. But Varin could not look away. "Your Majesty?" Kale's voice was sharp with alarm. "The candidates are... her." The word left Varen's mouth before he could stop it. The hall went silent. Then the whispers started, a rising tide of shock and scandal. A servant? The Alpha King chooses a servant? Has he gone mad? The hooded woman hadn't moved, hadn't looked up. Her hands were clasped before her, trembling slightly. "Your Majesty," Kale tried again, stepping closer. "This woman is not a candidate. She's not even registered. We don't know her bloodline, her..." "I said her." Varen moved forward, closing the distance between them. The crowd parted like water before a ship's prow. And still she didn't look up. Still she kept her face hidden beneath that heavy hood. What was she hiding? He stopped directly before her, close enough to touch, close enough to see the rapid flutter of her pulse at her throat. "Look at me," he commanded. She flinched but didn't obey. Something flickered in Varen's chest. Not his wolf, not yet, but something adjacent to it. Something that felt almost like curiosity. "You will be my queen," he said quietly. "The least you can do is show me your face." Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "You don't want to see my face, Your Majesty. I'll decide what I want." "No." Her chin lifted slightly, still shadowed. "You really won't." Defiance. From a servant. Before the entire court. Kale made a strangled noise. The whispers turned to gasps. And Varen felt something he hadn't felt in years. His lips wanted to curve. His dead heart wanted to beat faster. This small, hidden creature had just refused a direct command from the most powerful alpha in the realm. Fascinating. "What's your name?" he asked. A long pause. Then, "Seren." "Star." Someone had named this shadow-cloaked servant Star. "Well, Seren." Varen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers closed around her wrist. And the world exploded. Something inside him moved. Something that had been frozen, dormant, buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. It surged like a beast waking from centuries of sleep, and Varen's knees nearly buckled from the shock. No. Impossible. Then he heard it. A voice that was his and not his. A voice that rumbled from the hollow place where his wolf should have lived. She knows what they did to us." Varen's grip on her wrist tightened. His breath stopped. The voice spoke again, clearer now, edged with ancient fury. "Don't let her go. Whatever you do, don't let her go." The hooded woman, Seren, went rigid in his grasp. Her hidden face turned toward him, and though he couldn't see her eyes, he felt them. She had heard it too. Impossible. She had heard his wolf. "Take her to my chambers," Varen said, his voice barely steady. "Now." And as the guards moved to obey, as the court erupted into chaos behind him, Varen's wolf spoke once more, words that would haunt him for days to come. "They told you I was dead. They lied. And she's the only one who can prove it." The walk to the king's chambers felt endless. Seren kept her head bowed, her hood pulled low, acutely aware of every guard's footsteps behind her. The stone corridors of Thornhold were cold and ancient, their walls hung with tapestries depicting battles and conquests, the castle of conquerors, the home of the most brutal Alpha King in 3 generations, and now, apparently, her prison. What have I done? She had been so careful. 14 years of hiding in plain sight, of making herself invisible, of never speaking unless spoken to and never meeting anyone's eyes. 14 years of surviving by being no one. And then he had looked at her. No, not looked. Seen. as if her hood were made of glass, as if her secrets were written across her skin in letters of fire. The guards stopped before a massive oak door reinforced with iron. One of them knocked twice, then pushed it open without waiting for a response. Inside, he grunted. Seren stepped through. The chamber was enormous. A receiving room, she realized, not a bedroom. Tall windows overlooked the moonlit mountains. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to stand in. Bookshelves lined one wall. Weapons lined another. And there, silhouetted against the window, stood Varen. He had removed his formal jacket. The white shirt beneath was unlaced at the throat, revealing the hard planes of his collarbone. In the firelight, his pale hair looked almost silver, and his eyes. They were watching her with an intensity that made her insides twist. "Leave us," he said to the guards. The door closed. The lock clicked. Seren's pulse raced. "Take off your hood." "No." The word escaped before she could stop it. Defiance again. Stupid, stupid, stupid. She braced herself for violence, for the explosion of alpha rage that had killed lesser wolves for lesser offenses. But Varen didn't move. He simply tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle he intended to solve. "You're not afraid of me," he said slowly. It wasn't a question. "I'm terrified of you," Seren corrected quietly. "But there are things I fear more than death." "Such as? Being seen, being known, being found by the people who destroyed my family. That's my concern," she said instead. "Not yours." A long silence. The fire crackled. Seren counted her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. "You heard it," Varen said finally. Her blood went cold. "Heard what?" "Don't." His voice sharpened. "Don't lie to me. I felt your pulse jump when it spoke. You heard my wolf. Deny it. Deny everything. Run if you have to." But her feet wouldn't move, and her voice, traitor that it was, whispered, "Yes." Varen crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel the chill radiating from his body. Except there wasn't heat. There was cold. Unnatural cold, as if winter lived beneath his skin. "How?" he demanded. "My wolf has been silent for 20 years. No one has ever heard it. I have never heard it. But you—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "What are you?" Seren's hands trembled beneath her cloak. She should lie. She should protect herself. But the wolf's voice was still echoing in her head. "She knows what they did to us." And something about those words cracked open a door she had sealed shut long ago. "I hear wolves that shouldn't speak," she admitted quietly. "Wolves that have been silenced, bound, broken." She took a shaking breath. "I've been able to hear them since I was a child. It's why my family was—" She stopped herself. Too much. Too fast. "Was what?" Varen pressed. "Destroyed." The word hung between them like smoke. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Varen took a step back. His expression was unreadable, but something in his scent shifted. Not softer exactly, but less predatory. "I will make you a bargain," he said. Seren's eyes narrowed beneath her hood. "What kind of bargain?" "You will become my queen. You will give me heirs to secure my succession. In exchange, I will protect you from whoever destroyed your family. I will give you safety, status, resources, everything you need." It was more than she had ever dared hope for. It was also, obviously, a trap. "And in return?" she asked. "Beyond the heirs?" Varen's pale gaze locked onto hers. "You will tell me what was done to my wolf. You will find out who silenced it. And you will help me make them pay." Vengeance. That was the currency he traded in. That was the fire burning behind all that frost. "What if I can't?" Seren challenged. "What if I don't know enough?" "Then you'll learn." He stepped closer again, and this time his hand rose, Not to grab, but to hover near her hood. But first, I need to see what you're hiding. Panic clawed at her throat. Your Majesty. I'm not asking what's beneath your hood out of cruelty, he said quietly. I'm asking because my wolf is screaming at me that you're the key to everything, and I need to understand why. His wolf was screaming. At him. Seren felt the blood drain from her face. Because that shouldn't be possible. A bound wolf shouldn't have enough strength to communicate with its human half. The binding should have severed that connection completely. Unless the binding was starting to break. If I show you, she said slowly, you won't like what you see. I haven't liked anything in 11 years. I doubt you'll be the exception. A bitter laugh escaped her. You'd be surprised. She reached up with shaking hands, gripped the edge of her hood, and before she could lose her nerve, she pushed it back. The firelight fell across her face, across the delicate features that might have been beautiful once, across the silver eyes that marked her as something other than pure wolf, and across the scar. It ran from her left temple to her jaw, a jagged line of raised tissue that no healer could erase. But that wasn't what made Varen go still. That wasn't what drained the color from his already pale face. It was the mark above the scar. Burned into her forehead like a brand, a broken circle, two slashing lines, the ancient symbol of the Void Walkers, the outlawed wolf binders who had been hunted to extinction over a century ago. They didn't just destroy my family, Seren whispered, watching his expression shatter. They made me, raised me, trained me. Her voice broke. I was their tool for 12 years before I escaped. I know how wolf binding works, Your Majesty, because I was taught to perform it. She waited for the disgust, the revulsion, the execution order. Instead, Varen's hand slowly rose to his own chest, to the place over his heart where his wolf had been silent for nearly 2 decades. Then you know how to unbind one, he said. It wasn't a question, and the hope in his voice, raw, desperate, barely concealed, was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Maybe, Saren admitted. But if I'm wrong, if I try and fail, she swallowed hard, it could kill you. Varen's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I've been dying slowly for 20 years, he said. At least this way would be quick. The wedding was announced 3 days later. The court still hadn't recovered from the shock. Whispers followed Seren everywhere, through the corridors she was learning to navigate, through the gardens she walked alone each morning, through the great hall where noble she-wolves glared daggers at her hooded form. The servant queen, the hooded bride, the king's madness given flesh. Seren ignored them all. She had been given chambers adjoining the king's own, a suite of rooms larger than the entire house where she had grown up. The furniture was dark wood and velvet. The bed could have held 6 people. The windows looked out over a forest that seemed to stretch forever. She had also been given attendants. 3 women who had served the previous queen before her death. They were professional and distant. None of them asked about her hood. Varen had issued a decree the morning after their bargain. No one was to request, demand, or attempt to see the future queen's face. The penalty was death. Simple, brutal, effective. He's protecting me, Seren thought, standing before her window as dawnlight crept over the mountains. But why? She knew the obvious answer. She was useful to him, a tool to unbind his wolf, to restore what had been stolen from him. Once that purpose was fulfilled, she would be, what? Discarded? Kept as a symbol? Quietly eliminated? The darker possibility gnawed at her. What if he's planning to use me the same way the Voidwalkers did? A knock at her door shattered the thought. Enter, she called, pulling her hood lower. The door opened to reveal Kale, the king's advisor. He was a lean man with sharp features and sharper eyes, the kind of person who noticed everything and forgot nothing. He had opposed her selection from the first moment. She could smell the distrust on him like perfume. "The king requests your presence," Kale said coolly, "in the council chamber." "For what purpose?" "The wedding contract must be signed before witnesses." Nerves coiled in Seren's gut. Of course. The formal terms, the legal binding. She had agreed to this, to the heirs, the protection, the dangerous bargain. But the reality of it was only now sinking in. She would be his. In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the kingdom, in every way that mattered. "And he will never love you," she reminded herself harshly. "This is survival, not romance. Don't forget that." She followed Kale through the castle, memorizing each turn. The council chamber was in the east wing, a cavernous room dominated by a long table of polished oak. Morning light streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny spirits. Varin stood at the head of the table. He wore black again, of course. His pale hair was loose today, falling past his shoulders like strands of winter moonlight. His storm-colored eyes found her the moment she entered, tracking her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. But he wasn't alone. Seated around the table were 6 men and 2 women. The High Council, Saren realized. The most powerful nobles in Valdros. They stared at her with varying degrees of hostility, curiosity, and open disdain. Lord Brennick, the eldest counselor, had served as regent during Varen's minority after the old king's death. His weathered face showed nothing, but his scent carried suspicion. And at the far end of the table, separated from the others by deliberate distance, sat a woman Seren recognized instantly, Lady Morrigan Vane. Seren's blood turned to ice. Morrigan was beautiful in the way a poisoned blade was beautiful, gleaming, elegant, deadly. Her dark hair was piled atop her head in an elaborate style, her red gown cut to emphasize her considerable assets. She had been the favorite to become queen before Seren's unexpected selection, but that wasn't why Seren's hands had started to tremble. It was the ring on Morrigan's finger, a simple silver band set with a black stone. The Voidwalker's ring, the same design worn by the masters who had raised Seren. Who had branded her? Who had taught her the forbidden arts before she escaped? She's one of them, or connected to them. Either way, Lady Seren. Varen's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Please, sit." She forced her legs to move, forced herself to take the seat indicated, at Varen's right hand, directly across from Morrigan. The older woman's smile was polished and predatory. "So, this is the mysterious bride," Morrigan purred. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I simply must ask, is the hood a fashion statement, or are we to believe the rumors?" "What rumors?" Varen asked, his tone deceptively mild. "That she's hideously deformed, of course, or perhaps mad, or perhaps—" Morrigan's eyes glittered. "Something worse altogether." The temperature in the room dropped, literally. Seren felt the chill radiating from Varen like a physical force, pressing against her skin. "Lady Morrigan," he said softly, "you will address my future queen with the respect her position demands, or you will not address anyone ever again." The threat hung in the air, crystalline and absolute. Morrigan's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "Of course, Your Majesty. Forgive my curiosity." The contract was produced, a thick sheaf of pages covered in dense legal text. One of the council members, an elderly man named Lord Haddon, began to summarize the terms. "The marriage will be binding under royal law and pack law simultaneously. The Queen will be granted full authority over the household, the servants, and all domestic matters. She will bear the king's heirs, preferably multiple, to secure the succession." Seren half listened, her attention fixed on Morrigan. The woman was watching her with barely concealed hunger. Not for the throne, Seren realized. For something else. Something Morrigan thought Seren possessed. She knows what I am. Or suspects it. Meh. The queen will not be required to reveal her face to any member of the court, the council, or the kingdom at large. This condition is non-negotiable and will be enforced upon pain of death. A murmur rippled through the council. Several members exchanged glances. Unusual, Lord Haddon noted carefully. Unprecedented, in fact. I didn't ask for your opinion, Varen replied. I asked you to read the contract. Lord Haddon cleared his throat and continued. The terms were harsh but fair. Seren would have protection, status, wealth. She would want for nothing material. In exchange, she would be Varen's queen in name and duty, attending formal functions, producing heirs, representing the crown. What the contract didn't mention was the true bargain between them. The wolf, the unbinding, the vengeance. Those terms existed only in the space between their eyes. Do you, Lady Seren of No House, accept these terms of your own free will, without coercion or deception? Seren looked at the contract, looked at the council's hostile faces, looked at Morrigan's predatory smile, and finally looked at Varen. His pale eyes were unreadable. But beneath his scent of winter and iron, she caught something else. Something that might have been hope, buried deep. I accept, she said clearly. She signed. Varen signed. The witnesses signed. And when the last quill was set down, Morrigan rose from her seat. Allow me to be the first to congratulate you both, she said smoothly. I'm sure this union will be illuminating. The word hung in the air like a threat. As the council members filed out, Seren watched Morrigan go, watched the sway of her red gown, the glitter of her silver ring, the predatory grace of her movements. She knows something. About the binding, about Varen's wolf. Maybe about who performed it in the first place. You're staring, Varen murmured, suddenly close. Seren flinched. She hadn't heard him approach. His wolf silence extended to his physical movements. Apparently, predator quiet, despite having no predator inside him. Lady Morrigan, she said quietly. The ring she wears. Varen's eyes narrowed. What about it? I've seen that design before. Seren turned to face him fully, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. On the hands of the people who bound my wolf, who branded me, who taught me everything I know. Understanding dawned in Varen's expression, followed immediately by something colder. You think she's connected to the Voidwalkers? I think she might be one. Seren hesitated, then added, and if I'm right, Your Majesty, then she might be the one who bound your wolf in the first place. Varen went absolutely still. His scent didn't change. His features turned stony. But the temperature around him plummeted so sharply that Seren's breath fogged in the air between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft as snowfall and twice as deadly. Then I suggest you find out, quickly. He turned and walked away, leaving Seren alone in the council chamber with the weight of his command pressing down on her shoulders. Find out, he had said. But what she heard was something different. Something his wolf whispered from the hollow place inside his chest, loud enough that even she could catch the edges of it. Find the truth before they silence us both forever. The wedding was held at sundown, when the sky bled crimson and gold over the mountains of Valdros. Seren had expected a modest ceremony, something quiet, befitting a servant bride whom no one wanted. Instead, she found herself standing at the entrance of the great cathedral of Thornhold, its ancient stones carved with the faces of wolves long dead, while 1,000 witnesses waited inside. He's making a statement, she realized, daring anyone to challenge his choice. The gown they had dressed her in was silver white, fitted close to her body before flaring at the waist into cascading layers of silk. A masterpiece of craftsmanship. But more importantly, it came with a veil, a thick, embroidered piece that covered her face completely while still allowing her to see through the delicate weave. The hood was gone. In its place, this, a compromise, a symbol, a cage made of lace. My lady, one of her attendants, Isolde, the oldest of the three, touched her elbow gently. It's time. Seren took a breath. Then another. Then she walked into the cathedral. The noise hit her first, the rustle of silk, the whispered speculation, the sharp intake of breath as every head turned to watch her approach. The aisle stretched before her like a gauntlet, lined with nobles in their finest clothes, their wolves prowling beneath their skin with curiosity and contempt. The veiled queen, the servant bride, the king's madness. She heard it all, felt it all, and kept walking. At the altar, Varin waited. He was dressed in black velvet trimmed with silver, his pale hair braided back from his face in the warrior style of old Valdros. In the dying light that streamed through the stained glass windows, he looked like something from a legend, beautiful and terrible and utterly untouchable. But his eyes found hers through the veil, and in them she saw something unexpected. Uncertainty. He's as afraid as I am, Seren realized. He's just better at hiding it. The priest began to speak, ancient words in the old tongue, invoking the bond between wolf and wolf, between Alpha and Omega, between king and queen. Seren barely heard them. She was too aware of Varin standing beside her, of the chill that radiated from his body, of his wolf stirring restlessly in that hollow place inside his chest. It had grown stronger in the 3 days since the contract signing. She could feel it more clearly now. Not words, but impressions. Flashes of emotion that didn't belong to her. Hunger, rage, and beneath it all, a grief so profound it made her want to weep. What did they do to you? She thought. What did they take? The rings, the priest announced. A servant approached bearing a velvet cushion. 2 rings rested upon it, simple bands of white gold, unadorned except for a single black stone set into each. Dread pooled in Seren's chest. Black stones, like Morrigan's ring, like the rings worn by Voidwalker masters. Her eyes flew to Varin's face. He had noticed too. She could see it in the slight tightening of his jaw, the flicker of cold fury in his winter gaze. But he said nothing. Simply took the smaller ring and reached for her hand. His fingers were frost against her skin. With this ring, he said, his voice carrying through the cathedral, I claim you as mine, my queen, my partner, my equal in all things. The words were traditional, but the way he said them, low, deliberate, almost challenging, made them feel like something else entirely. A promise, a threat, a vow that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with possession. He slid the ring onto her finger. The black stone pulsed once, a heartbeat of cold darkness, and Seren felt something lock into place. A connection, a tether, something binding her to him in ways the ceremony alone could never accomplish. The rings, she realized with dawning horror. They're not just symbols, they're anchors. Anchors originally designed to strengthen bindings. But perhaps, if she could manipulate the connection, they could become something else entirely. Her hands trembled as she took the larger ring. With this ring, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. I claim you as mine, my king, my partner, my equal in all things. She slid it onto his finger. Another pulse, another lock clicking shut, and in the hollow place inside Varen's chest, his wolf howled. The sound ripped through Seren's mind like lightning, raw, agonized, and triumphant all at once. She gasped, swaying on her feet. Varen's hand shot out to steady her, his grip bruising. What was that? He breathed, so quietly only she could hear. The rings, she whispered back. They're doing something. Connecting us. Or connecting to your wolf, I'm not. The blessing, the priest interrupted, oblivious to their exchange. Your Majesty, you may now seal your union before the eyes of gods and wolves alike. The kiss? Of course. The ceremonial kiss that would complete the bond. The crowd leaned forward, 1,000 pairs of eyes fixed on the veiled bride, waiting to see if the Alpha King would finally reveal her face. Varen turned to her fully. His hand rose, not to her veil, but to her jaw, cupping it through the delicate fabric. His thumb traced her cheekbone, her lower lip, mapping the shape of her face without exposing it. I will honor your wish, he murmured, too quietly for anyone else to hear. Always. Then he leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead, just above where her brand was hidden. The crowd erupted. Not in cheers. In confusion. Outrage. Scandal. The king had not kissed his bride properly, had not lifted her veil, had not claimed her the way an alpha should claim his mate. But Seren stood frozen, her skin burning where his cold lips had touched. He knew. He knew exactly where the brand was, and he kissed it anyway, as if it didn't matter, as if she mattered more. Your Majesty, the priest sputtered, clearly uncertain how to proceed. The traditional is complete, Varen interrupted coolly. My queen and I will retire now. He took her hand, still icy, but somehow steadying, and led her back down the aisle. The whispers followed them like a tide. The stares burned like brands. But all Seren could think about was the howl still echoing in her mind, and the 3 words his wolf had screamed the moment those rings connected. Finally, she's ours. The king's chambers were frigid. Not metaphorically, literally cold, as if winter had taken up permanent residence within the stone walls. Frost crept along the edges of the windows. The fire in the massive hearth seemed to shrink away from the chill, its flames weak and flickering. Seren stood just inside the door, her veil removed now that they were alone, and her silver eyes taking in every detail. The enormous bed with its dark curtains, the weapons mounted on the walls, the complete absence of anything personal. No portraits, no mementos, no evidence that anyone actually lived here. A tomb for a man who wasn't quite dead. You're shivering, Varen observed. He stood by the window, still in his wedding clothes, his back to her. It's freezing. I know. A pause. I'll have them bring more blankets. And furs. I don't feel the cold the way others do. Because his wolf was bound. Because whatever had been done to him had turned his inner fire to ice. Seren wrapped her arms around herself. The rings, she said. We need to talk about the rings. Tomorrow. Varen turned to face her, and in the dim light he looked exhausted. The harsh lines of his face seemed sharper, his skin paler than usual. Tonight we have other obligations. The consummation, the final seal on their union. Apprehension knotted in Seren's belly. She had known this was coming, had agreed to it in the contract, understood it as part of the bargain. But knowing and feeling were different things. You're afraid, Varen said quietly. I'm not afraid of you. Then what? Of being seen, of being touched, of letting someone close enough to destroy me. It's been a long time, she said instead, which was true. And I won't force you. His voice was flat, matter of fact. Despite what the contract says, despite what the court expects. If you're not willing, I won't touch you. The words hit her like a blow. She had expected demands, commands, the Alpha King taking what was his by right. Instead, he was offering her choice. Again. Why? She asked, genuinely confused. You need heirs. The succession depends on it. Why would you? Because I'm not a monster. His jaw clenched. Whatever else they've taken from me, they didn't take that. They, The people who had bound his wolf. The people Seren was beginning to suspect included Lady Morrigan and her Voidwalker ring. "Tell me something," she said slowly. "Something true. Something you've never told anyone else." Varen's brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because if we're going to do this, the heirs, the marriage, the unbinding, I need to trust you. And right now I don't." Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled weakly. Frost continued its slow creep across the glass. Then Varen spoke. "I was 7 when they bound my wolf." The air left Seren's lungs. "I don't remember much. Just pain. Cold. The feeling of something being ripped out of me and locked away where I couldn't reach it." His voice was distant, almost clinical, as if he were reciting someone else's history. "My father called it a necessary precaution, said my wolf was too wild, too dangerous, that it would have destroyed me if they hadn't contained it." "Your father ordered the binding?" "Yes." A single word, sharp as broken glass. "He died 3 years later, hunting accident. Or so they claimed." Or so they claimed. Because Varen didn't believe it. Because whatever had happened to his wolf, he suspected it was connected to his father's death. "Lord Brennick served as regent until I came of age," Varen continued, his voice hardening. 6 years of being told I was too young, too inexperienced, too damaged to rule. 6 years of watching others make decisions in my name. Seren filed this away. The regent. Another potential player in whatever conspiracy had stolen Varen's wolf. "The cold," she said quietly. "That's a side effect of the binding. Your wolf's heat trapped inside, turning to ice because it has nowhere to go." Varen's gaze sharpened. "You know this how?" "Because I've seen it before. In the Voidwalker compound." She took a breath, forcing herself to continue. "They bound dozens of wolves while I was there. Children mostly. The ones who survived developed abnormalities. Cold bodies. Dulled senses. Shortened lifespans." "Shortened." His voice was very quiet. "The binding eats away at the host over time. Without the wolf's energy to sustain them, most don't live past 40. She met his eyes. "How old are you?" 27. 13 years. If her estimates were correct, he had 13 years left. Maybe less. "Then we don't have time to waste," Seren said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The unbinding needs to happen soon. And for that to work, I need to understand exactly what they did to you." She crossed to him before she could lose her nerve. Stopped close enough to feel the chill radiating from his body like a fever in reverse. "May I?" she asked, raising her hand toward his chest. Varen went still. Something flickered in his pale eyes. Not fear, but something adjacent to it. Vulnerability, perhaps. The wariness of a wounded animal being offered help it doesn't trust. "What are you going to do?" "Listen," she said simply. "To your wolf." A long pause. Then slowly he nodded. Seren pressed her palm flat against his chest, directly over his heart. The cold was immediate and shocking, like plunging her hand into a frozen lake. But beneath it, she could feel something else. A pulse, a presence, a creature trapped in ice, clawing at the walls of its prison. She closed her eyes and reached. The wolf's voice slammed into her mind like an avalanche. "Help us! Help us! They put us in the dark. The dark is so cold. We've been alone for so long. Help us. Please. Please." Tears streamed down Seren's face. "What do you hear?" Varen's voice was strained. "Pain," she whispered. "So much pain. It's been screaming for 20 years and no one could hear it." His hand came up to cover hers, pressing it harder against his chest. His skin was ice, but his grip was desperate. "Can you free it?" "I don't know yet." She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "But I'm going to try. Whatever it takes." Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth. He seemed incapable of warmth, but something close to it. Gratitude, perhaps. Or hope. The consummation. He said quietly. It can wait. Until you're ready. Until we trust each other. Seren should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Disappointment. Don't be foolish, she told herself fiercely. This is a bargain, not a romance. He needs your skills, not your heart. But when Varen's hand tightened over hers, when his wolf whispered hours, finally hours in her mind, she couldn't quite make herself believe it. I'll stay tonight, she said. In here. With you. His eyes widened slightly. Why? Because your wolf is calmer when I'm close, and because... She hesitated, then admitted the truth. I'm tired of being alone too. They slept in the same bed but didn't touch. Seren curled beneath a mountain of furs, her body slowly warming the space around her. Varen lay rigid on the far side, his back to her, the cold radiating from him in waves. But sometime in the night, she woke to find his hand reaching for hers across the vast expanse of sheets. She took it, and his wolf, for the first time in 20 years, went quiet. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Each morning, Seren woke in the king's frigid chambers, her hand still tangled with his. Each morning, she felt the frost retreat slightly, as if her presence alone was enough to thaw something that had been frozen for decades. They didn't speak of it, didn't acknowledge the strange intimacy that had developed between them. But it was there. In the way Varen's eyes found her across crowded rooms, in the way his wolf whispered her name like a prayer, in the way he began to seek her out for things that had nothing to do with their bargain. The eastern provinces are requesting additional grain stores, he said one afternoon, spreading maps across the table in his study. The harvest was poor this year. Then give them the grain, Seren replied, studying the maps from beneath her ever-present veil. The court required her face to be covered. She had accepted this, though it chafed. It's not that simple. The southern lords will demand compensation. The treasury is already strained by the military campaigns my father began. Then end the campaigns. Varen looked at her sharply. What? The wars your father started, are they necessary? They're tradition. The expansion of Valdros has continued for 3 generations. At what cost? Seren moved closer to the map, tracing the border territories with one finger. These lands here, they've been contested for decades. The fighting has depleted your treasury, killed thousands of your soldiers, and created enemies on every border. Meanwhile, your own people starve. Varen was silent for a long moment. No one has ever suggested ending the campaigns, he said finally. Then perhaps no one has been paying attention to what matters. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not agreement exactly, but recognition. Understanding. You're not what I expected, Varen admitted. Neither are you. He almost smiled. Almost? The expression flickered across his face and vanished like sunlight through clouds. But Seren saw it, and her heart did something complicated in her chest. Stop, she told herself. This isn't real. This is strategy. Survival. But every night, when they lay side by side in the darkness, when his cold hand found her warm one, when his wolf sang quiet songs of contentment in her mind, it became harder to remember that. 2 weeks after the wedding, Seren began her investigation of Lady Morrigan. It required subtlety. Morrigan was one of the most powerful nobles in Valdros, the head of House Vane and controller of vast mineral wealth in the northern mountains. She had the ear of half the council and the loyalty of a significant portion of the military. She was also watching Seren with an intensity that felt like being hunted. The queen seems to have adapted well to her new role, Morrigan observed during a council meeting, her voice silk over steel. Though I confess, I remain curious about her qualifications. Her qualifications are my concern, Varen replied coolly. Not yours. Of course, Your Majesty. I meant no offense. But Morrigan's dark eyes glittered with something that looked very much like challenge. After the meeting, Seren lingered in the corridors, waiting for the council members to disperse. When Morrigan finally emerged, Seren followed at a distance. The older woman moved through the castle with the confidence of someone who had walked these halls for decades. Down the main corridor, left at the gallery of portraits, through a door that servants rarely used. Seren kept pace, her soft-soled shoes silent on the stone. Morrigan descended into the lower levels of the castle, past the wine cellars, past the storage rooms, into a section that appeared on no official map. The air grew colder, though not with Varen's supernatural chill. This was different. Older. The cold of deep earth and darker things. Finally, Morrigan stopped before a heavy iron door. Seren pressed herself into an alcove, holding her breath. Morrigan produced a key from her bodice and unlocked the door. Before stepping through, she paused and spoke. Not to anyone visible, but to the air itself. The binding holds, but she's interfering. The connection between them grows stronger every day. A voice responded. Or rather, a presence responded. Seren couldn't hear words, but she felt them. A pressure in her skull, a whisper of darkness, a power so ancient it made her bones ache. I understand, Morrigan said. The ritual will proceed as planned, but we may need to accelerate the timeline. Before she undoes everything we've built. The door opened. Morrigan stepped through. The door closed, and Seren stood in the shadows, her pulse racing, her mind churning. The ritual. They're planning something. Something connected to Varen's binding. She needed to know more, needed to get through that door, see what lay beyond. But not tonight. Tonight, she had learned enough. She told Varen everything. They sat in his study, the fire built higher than usual at her request, the door locked and warded against eavesdroppers. Varen listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word. The lower levels, he said finally. I didn't know there were chambers below the cellars. Neither did anyone else, apparently. She has a key. She has access to something. Someone. Powerful enough that I could feel it from 20 feet away. A voidwalker? Possibly. Or something worse. Seren leaned forward. She mentioned a ritual, and she said I was interfering, that our connection is growing stronger. Varen's pale eyes met hers. In the firelight, they looked almost warm, almost human. It is, he said quietly, growing stronger. I can feel you now, even when you're not touching me, like a warmth at the edge of my consciousness. Seren's heart stuttered. You can? My wolf responds to you in ways it's never responded to anyone. When you're close, the ice recedes, just slightly, but enough to notice. She didn't know what to say to that, didn't know what to feel. This is the unbinding working, she told herself. It's the magic, not real connection, not real. Seren. His voice was soft. Whatever Morrigan is planning, whatever ritual she's preparing, we need to move faster. The unbinding has to happen before they can complete their work. I know. She swallowed hard. But the unbinding is dangerous. If I do it wrong, you won't. You don't know that. I know you. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. His skin was still cold, but less so than before. Measurably, noticeably less. You escaped the Voidwalkers when you were 12 years old. You survived alone for 14 years. You looked at me, the most feared alpha in the realm, and refused to show me your face. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You are the bravest person I have ever met, and if anyone can unbind my wolf, it's you. Tears burned behind Serene's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her with such complete, unwavering faith. "What if I fail?" she whispered. "Then we fail together." His grip tightened. "But I would rather die trying than live another year in this frozen prison." His wolf echoed the sentiment, a howl of agreement that resonated through her bones. "Free us. Even if it kills us, free us." Inside her own chest, Serene's wolf stirred in response, the beast she had suppressed for 14 years, ever since escaping the Voidwalkers. They had trained her to silence it, to treat it as a tool rather than a partner. But feeling the echo of Varen's wolf through their strange connection, feeling the bond that had formed between them, her wolf wanted out. Serene made her decision. 3 days, she said. "I need 3 days to prepare, to study the binding patterns, to gather the materials. And then—" "And then?" She met his eyes, her silver gaze steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "And then, we either break the chains that hold you, or we both die trying." Varen's lips curved, not quite a smile, but closer than she'd ever seen. "Together," he said. "Together," she agreed. And in the space between their joined hands, his wolf spoke 3 words that changed everything. "I love her." Varen went rigid. His eyes widened. His grip on her hand turned crushing. "What?" Serene breathed. "What's wrong?" But he was already pulling away, his expression shuddering, ice flooding back into his gaze. "Nothing," he said. "It's nothing." He was lying. She knew he was lying. But before she could press, before she could demand the truth, a servant burst through the door. "Your Majesty! The northern watchtowers, they've been attacked. Lady Morrigan's forces are moving toward the castle." Varen was on his feet in an instant, all traces of vulnerability gone, replaced by the cold, brutal efficiency of the Alpha King. "How many?" "Thousands, sire, and they're not alone." The servant's face was pale with terror. "They've brought something with them. Something that screams." Serene felt the blood drain from her face. She knew what screamed like that. She had heard it in her nightmares for 14 years. A void beast, a creature born from the agony of bound wolves, twisted into something monstrous by Voidwalker magic. And Morrigan had just unleashed it on the kingdom. The castle erupted into chaos. Servants fled through corridors. Soldiers scrambled for weapons. The distant sound of screaming, not human, not wolf. Something between, and worse than both, echoed off the ancient stones of Thornhold. Serene ran alongside Varen, her veil abandoned, her branded forehead exposed to anyone who cared to look. No one did. They were too busy trying to survive. "The watchtowers fell in minutes," Cale reported, matching their pace. His face was ashen. "Whatever that thing is, our weapons don't touch it." "It's a void beast," Serene said grimly, "created from bound wolves who were pushed past the breaking point. Their pain becomes power. Their rage becomes form." Varen's gaze turned lethal. "How do we kill it?" "You don't. Not with conventional weapons." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. "Varen, listen to me. The only thing that can destroy a void beast is the opposite of what created it. Unbound power. A wolf set free." Understanding dawned in his storm-colored eyes. "My wolf. If we unbind it now, tonight, you might be the only thing standing between that creature and the total destruction of your kingdom." "Might?" "The unbinding could kill you. The beast could kill you. Morrigan's forces could kill you." Serene's voice wavered. "But doing nothing will kill everyone else." The screaming grew louder, closer. Varen looked toward the sound, then back at her. His expression was carved from ice, but his eyes burned with something she had never seen there before. "Then we do it now," he said. "The unbinding. Whatever it takes." "Varen, you said you needed 3 days. You have 3 minutes." He took her face in his cold hands, his grip fierce. "I trust you." My wolf trusts you. Now do it. There was no time for preparation. No time for proper ritual or careful calibration. There was only Siren, Varin, and the frozen creature howling inside his chest. She placed both hands over his heart, and she reached. The binding was worse than anything she had imagined. In her mind's eye, she saw it. Chains of black ice wrapped around a massive wolf, a creature of silver and shadow that should have been magnificent, but had been reduced to something skeletal, something starving. The chains pierced its flesh, hooked into its bones, froze its blood in its veins. And they were old, so old that they had become part of the wolf itself, inextricable from its very essence. "Help us," the wolf whimpered. "Please. It hurts. It's always hurt." Siren's heart shattered. "I'm here," she whispered, both aloud and in that inner space. "I'm going to get you out, but it's going to hurt more before it gets better. Do you understand?" "Yes, we understand. We're not afraid anymore." The wolf's silver eyes met hers. "She's here. Our mate. We're not alone. Mate." The word hit Siren like a physical blow, but there was no time to process it, no time to question what it meant. She could hear the void beast's screams growing closer, could feel the castle shaking with its approach. She grabbed the first chain and pulled. The wolf screamed. Varen screamed. Power exploded outward like a frozen star going supernova. Outside, the world was ending. The void beast had breached the castle walls, a massive, writhing horror of shadow and teeth, and the faces of 100 bound wolves, all screaming in eternal torment. Morrigan rode at the head of her forces, her dark hair whipping in the wind, her Voidwalker ring blazing with corrupted power. "Find them," she commanded. "Find the king and the girl. The ritual must be completed before—" A pulse of energy tore through the castle. Every wolf in the courtyard, Morrigan's soldiers, the royal guard, even the void beast itself, staggered as something shifted in the fabric of reality. A pressure, a presence, the sense of something ancient and terrible finally breaking free. Morrigan's face went white. "No," she breathed. "That's impossible. The binding was perfect. He should never have been able to—" The wall of the great hall exploded outward, and through the rubble walked the Alpha King. But he was not the man he had been. Silver light blazed from his eyes. His pale hair whipped around his face like a living thing. Frost no longer clung to his skin. Instead, heat radiated from him in waves, steam rising from his body as 20 years of frozen power finally ignited. At his side, translucent but unmistakable, prowled his wolf. It was massive, easily twice the size of any wolf Siren had ever seen. Its fur was silver white, its eyes burning gold, its presence so overwhelming that lesser wolves dropped to their knees in instinctive submission. "Morrigan!" the wolf's voice boomed, not just in Varen's mind, but aloud, audible to everyone present. "You chained us. You stole our voice. You murdered our father when he tried to free us." Morrigan stumbled backward. "That's not— I didn't— Don't lie." Varen's voice was his own, but layered now, resonant with his wolf's power. "My wolf remembers everything. Every moment of the binding. Every word you spoke. Every deal you made with my father to keep me contained. And how you killed him when he finally realized what you'd done to his son." The truth crashed through Siren like a wave. Morrigan hadn't just bound Varen's wolf. She had orchestrated everything. The binding when he was a child, the manipulation of his father, and finally the murder when the old king had tried to undo her work. "You've been controlling the throne for 20 years, Siren realized. An alpha king without his wolf is vulnerable, suggestible, easy to manipulate. That's why you did it." Morrigan's expression twisted from fear into fury. "You know nothing," she spat. "The Voidwalkers built this kingdom. We were here before the wolves, before the alpha lines, before any of it, and we will reclaim what was taken from us." She raised her ring hand toward the void beast. "Destroy them!" The creature lunged. The battle that followed would become legend. Varen met the void beast head-on, his newly freed wolf lending him speed and strength beyond anything he had ever possessed. Silver light clashed against shadow. Claws tore through darkness. The courtyard became a maelstrom of power and pain, but even unbound, even at full strength, the void beast was too large, too powerful, too fueled by the agony of 100 tortured wolves. He can't win alone, Siren realized. She had collapsed after the unbinding, her energy depleted, and her body trembling from the strain. But watching Varen fight, watching him take blow after blow, watching him refuse to fall, something awakened inside her. Her wolf. She had kept it suppressed for so long. The Voidwalkers had trained her to silence it, to treat it as a tool rather than a partner. But now, feeling the echo of Varen's wolf through their strange connection, feeling the bond that had formed between them, her wolf wanted out. "Yes," Siren whispered. "Yes. Help me." She rose to her feet. Power flooded through her. Not silver like Varen's, but gold, warm as sunlight, bright as hope. Her wolf unfurled inside her chest, a creature of flame and dawn that had been waiting patiently for 14 years. "Finally," it purred. "Finally, we fight together." Siren ran toward the battle. Morrigan saw her coming and laughed. "The little Voidwalker slave? You think you can—" Serene's fist connected with her jaw. The older woman staggered, shock replacing contempt. Before she could recover, Seren was on her, grappling for the ring that blazed on her finger. "That ring is the anchor," Seren shouted to Varen. "It controls the beast. Destroy it and the creature falls." Morrigan fought back with desperate strength. Her fingers clawed at Seren's face, her brand, trying to trigger old traumas, old fears. "You're nothing!" Morrigan shrieked. "You were born to serve us, to bind wolves, not free them." "I was born," Seren growled, "to be more than what you made me." She wrenched the ring from Morrigan's finger and crushed it in her bare hand. The effect was instantaneous. The void beast screamed, a sound of release rather than rage. The shadowy form began to dissolve, the faces of the bound wolves finally finding peace. Finally let go. One by one they faded into light, their torment ended. The creature collapsed, and with it, Morrigan's army. Without the beast to lead them, without the ring to command them, the Voidwalker soldiers faltered. The royal guard surged forward. Within minutes, it was over. Morrigan knelt in the ruins of the courtyard, her power broken, her forces defeated, her centuries-old plan destroyed by a servant girl and a king who had been told he would never love. Varen approached her slowly, his wolf prowling at his side. "You took everything from me," he said quietly. "My childhood. My father. 20 years of my life." Morrigan looked up at him with hatred burning in her eyes. "And I would do it again. The wolves were never meant to rule. You're animals. Beasts pretending to be. Enough." Varen's hand closed around her throat. "You will be taken to the deepest dungeon in Valdros. You will spend the rest of your existence in darkness and silence, the same fate you condemned my wolf to. And when you finally die, alone and forgotten, perhaps then you'll understand what you stole." He released her. Guards dragged her away. And then, finally, Varen turned to Seren. They stood in the ruins of the courtyard, surrounded by destruction and the bodies of the fallen. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Varen's wolf had receded, not gone, but settled, finally at peace within his chest. He looked different now, warmer, more human somehow, despite being more wolf than ever. "You saved me," he said. Serene shook her head. We saved each other. No. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. His skin was warm now. Truly warm, the ice finally melted. You gave me back everything I thought I'd lost. My wolf, my past, my ability to feel. His thumb traced the brand on her forehead, gentle as a prayer. And something I never expected to find, he added softly. My mate. Seren inhaled sharply. Your wolf said... I know what my wolf said. Varen's eyes, no longer cold but soft, warm, alive, met hers. And for once, we're in complete agreement. Varen, I was trained by your enemies. I carry their mark. I'm not fit to be. You're fit to be anything you choose to be. His grip tightened. And I'm choosing you. Not because of a contract or a bargain or political necessity, because you saw me, the broken, frozen, hollow version of me, and you stayed anyway. You fought for me when I'd given up fighting for myself. Of course I did. Tears spilled down Seren's cheeks. I love you. The words hung in the air between them, terrifying, liberating, and true. Varen's wolf howled in triumph inside his chest, and Varen himself smiled. A real smile, full and bright, transforming his harsh features into something beautiful. I love you too, he said. Both of us, man and wolf, for as long as we live. He kissed her, not on the forehead this time, not through a veil. A real kiss, full of heat and promise and 20 years of frozen longing finally set free. When they finally broke apart, the sun had fully risen. A new day, a new kingdom, a new beginning. 6 months later, Valdros had transformed. The wars of expansion had ended. The grain stores had been redistributed. The military campaigns that had bled the treasury dry were replaced by trade agreements and diplomatic alliances. And for the first time in 3 generations, wolves who had been bound by Voidwalker magic were being freed. Seren led the effort personally. She had established a sanctuary in the northern mountains, a place where bound wolves could come to be healed, where the chains that had been forced upon them could be carefully removed. Some came from distant kingdoms. Some had been hidden for decades. All of them left whole. Another successful unbinding, Isolde reported, entering Seren's study with a stack of documents. The older woman had become Seren's closest advisor, her stern demeanor hiding a fierce loyalty. The young wolf from the eastern provinces. He's recovering well. Seren smiled, one hand resting on the swell of her belly. Good. That's good. The pregnancy had been unexpected. A gift neither of them had planned for, but both had embraced with overwhelming joy. The heir that Valdros needed, yes. But more importantly, a child born of love rather than obligation. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Varen entered, still dressed in riding clothes, his pale hair windswept. 6 months of freedom had changed him profoundly. He smiled easily now, laughed. His wolf was a constant presence, not overwhelming, but comfortable, like a limb he had finally learned to use. The delegation from the Western Kingdoms has arrived, he said. They want to discuss establishing similar sanctuaries in their territories. Morrigan's influence spread further than we realized, Seren murmured. It did, but so will the cure. Varen crossed to her, pressing a kiss to her temple before resting his hand beside hers on her belly. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. His wolf rumbled in agreement, its voice warm and content in the space they now shared. Our mate, it said. Our pup. Our pack. The wedding rings they still wore had transformed along with everything else. The black stones, originally designed to strengthen bindings, had become something new when Seren performed the unbinding, conduits of connection rather than chains. They pulsed now with shared warmth, a constant reminder of what they had built together. Seren leaned into Varen's embrace, feeling the heat of him. Real heat. Human heat. No longer the frozen shell of a bound wolf. Through their bond, she felt his love like sunlight, constant and unwavering. "I never thought I'd have this," she admitted. "A home, a family, a purpose." "Neither did I." His arms tightened around her. "I thought I would die in that cold darkness, alone, forgotten." And now? He turned her to face him, his storm-colored eyes, warm now, always warm, meeting her silver ones. "Now I understand what my wolf was trying to tell me from the moment we met." He kissed her softly. "You weren't just the one who could hear it. You were the one who could free it, free both of us." Seren thought of everything they had survived: the ceremony, the contract, the binding, the battle. Two broken creatures who had found each other in the darkness and fought their way back to the light. "You thought you were the strongest alpha?" she said with a small smile. "Until my wolf spoke back," he finished, "and told me the truth I'd been too frozen to see." "Which was?" His lips curved. His wolf's voice layered beneath his own, both of them speaking the same words with the same absolute certainty. "That strength isn't about domination or control or never showing weakness. It's about finding someone worth fighting for, and letting them fight for you, too." Seren kissed him then, long and slow, feeling their bond pulse between them like a shared heartbeat. Outside, the sun shone over a kingdom finally at peace. Inside, two wolves, one of silver shadow, one of golden flame, curled together in the warmth of a love that had defied everything meant to destroy it. They had entered this marriage as strangers bound by secrets. They emerged from it as mates bound by choice. And in the end, that made all the difference.